One of the things that really truly infuriates me as a Nintendo fan is seeing non-fans, people who don't know anything about the company, don't know anything about the characters, don't know anything about Nintendo's success at the global level, will try to do is they will try and make these weird, arbitrary, nonsensical jokes that don't make any sense, that don't relate to anything, that just kind of falls apart. If you know even a little bit about the people involved, the characters, and how successful they actually are. We see this a lot with Pokemon specifically, like where people always try and tell you that, like, oh man, Pokemon's fallen off. It's not as big as it used to be, and yet, meanwhile, it's like, literally the biggest thing in the world. Okay, the whole cope about Pokemon is just one example. Back in the day, people used to scream at you about like Frozen is what the kids are into today. Disney, and what happens? The entire Disney Corporation just collapses. Everyone hates them, and once they're like 40-year-old obese man child Disney adult demographic, you know, has one foot in the grave, the company is just going to implode. Okay. Disney is done. They are not relevant. Star Wars isn't relevant. Marvel, like, Nintendo's going to dominate all of that. Right. But the overwhelming majority of the Western world doesn't like admitting it. They don't like admitting how successful Nintendo is. They don't actually like acknowledging that this company is bigger and better than their favorite thing. And they certainly don't like acknowledging that their preferred icons and their preferred celebrities aren't any aren't shit. Okay. Like, I talked about this like before several times in the past, but the most glaring example to me in like the past year is the whole Diddy Kong thing. Because of course we know that there's some no-name hip hop artist called P Diddy that got arrested for doing something, I don't know, being gay, like all these rappers are, he was gay. Like the narrative was that, like, oh man, Nintendo can't use Diddy Kong anymore because P Diddy was so big and he was so iconic and he was such a relevant thing. Like, P Diddy was huge. Like, Nintendo can't use Diddy Kong because that would be associating the character with pedophilia. Like, never mind that like Diddy Kong is bigger than P Diddy ever was. Never mind that Diddy Kong came first. Never mind that Diddy Kong will stay relevant after P Diddy's career is over. Never mind like the fact that the character is just so iconic, so fun, has so much going on. Now, let's just throw all that out of the window to pretend that a hip hop artist that nobody has ever heard of is bigger than Diddy Kong. Like, let's just think about that for a second. A hip hop artist, someone that has no real talent, who is like entirely controlled by the music industry, who is just pushed to the forefront in that sphere to try and indoctrinate, society into being criminals, someone who is a pedophile, who sexually assaults other people, who has contributed nothing of value to society or to the music industry or like anything. You are going to sit there and tell me that P Diddy at any point in his career was bigger than Diddy Kong. That's just laughably stupid and is just laughably off base as to like what the reality of the situation is. The reality is all of these celebrities are forced. They don't have any real talent. Nobody actually likes them. Nobody actually follows their careers. Nobody actually like looks at someone like P Diddy and thinks he's someone like worthy of emulating, or someone who's respectable, or someone who has any real talent. All they care about is like, being like him, in the sense of like, getting away with raping Justin Bieber. That's the uh that's the mindset of like every fan of the music industry, is that they wish they could be as hedonistic and disgusting and depraved as Taylor Swift, as Eminem, as like, all of these like big names who are just every single one of them can get mogged by like a random chick at a country music event with a acoustic guitar, right? It's kind of shocking, when you actually, see like local musicians and like how talented they are and what they can do and the original compositions that they make, just how much better and more like culturally relevant those people are than like the no like the big names that are pushed by the industry, right? And I do think that is something we do need to talk about a lot more when it comes to these kind of things. Nobody in the music industry has any real talent. It's all fake. It's all like astroturf. It always was. None of these people are like genuinely talented or like worthy of respect in any way, shape, or form. Right? They are all losers, and it does need to be emphasized more among the community that trying to associate like Nintendo's brand, which is more successful than anything in the music industry, then with someone like P Diddy, is just like laughably off base. It was just stupid. It was just such a unmeaningful comparison. It really was just an attempt at trying to like continue this farce into pretending that like Nintendo is like some underground thing when in reality it's super mainstream and everyone likes it. Like it's just one of those things where like uh the rap industry is still trying to convince people that it isn't crap, you know? Like it's just appalling. And I do think that is one of the major cultural things we really need to go through, over the next like 20 years, is acknowledging that, like, yes, South Park was a bad show, rap culture was bad for society. Grand Theft Auto was like, it does need to be acknowledged more that these kinds of like degenerate media are negatively impacting people. And this is a really good example as to why. The fact of the matter is, P. Diddy got away with it for years because everyone in his sphere, everyone in his circle, everyone in his community, his fans, like, refused to really acknowledge that this homosexual was a terrible person and needed to be taken down. This guy is going to die a complete nobody, and no one will remember him or care after his death.